Hey, what's going on, everybody? Back with another how-to. Today we're going to be doing an oil change on this 2008 Volkswagen Jetta 2.5. Now this should fall in line with any MK5 Volkswagen Jetta, which is 2006 to 2010. So let's get into it now. All right, so we are under the car. We got it jacked up on jack stands. And if you're curious how I jacked it up from the jack point, and then I have the jack stand resting right on there on that control arm bushing mount. All right, so now what we're going to do is remove the 8 T25 Torx Spit screws holding our splash guard on. There is 4 on each side, so we're just going to go ahead and shoot these things off and remove them with an impact. All right, now that we have all 8 of those Torx Spit screws holding the splash guard on, as you can see, it has these holding it onto the bumper and these little clips in here which clip it onto the bumper. So all we need to do is pop these out and we should be able to start pushing this right out and slide the whole splash guard right back. Oh, that was easy. Thing flew right off, guys. So right here, right there, or the 2 little clips are, I just push it in with my finger, slid it right back. All right, so now that we have our splash guard off, we're gonna go ahead and remove the oil drain pan plug. So that is a 19 millimeter. I'm just gonna take a 19 millimeter wrench and crack this thing loose, but you could also use a socket wrench or, you know, something of that nature. So this is a pretty tight bolt here. Hoping that it's not damaged, although I do have a new one. Now I do have a steel pan here in the drain pan, so that's just how I try to protect the ground and do my best to get no oil splatter anywhere. So this thing should be loose. Let's get the pan in position here. Go ahead and thread this guy on out of here. All right, so there we go, guys. We're gonna go ahead and let all that drain right into our drain pan. All right, that oil is just about dripped out. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and plug this thing back up with the drain plug. Now, like I said, I did get a new drain plug, and it's a good thing I did, because check out this washer on the original and look at the replacement. Now, this is an OEM replacement VW plug, but I mean, look at that. That thing is crushed in comparison to the new one. All right, so just something to be aware of. Just make sure you or the person doing this prior isn't over torquing this, and we will be torquing this thing to spec. So I'm going to go ahead and start threading this new one on in here. Get that new one threaded in, and this one's going a lot smoother than that OE one did. I'm going to go ahead and get this just finger tight in here, and then we're going to move on to the oil filter. All right, so as you can see, we have our new drain plug threaded in there finger tight. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the oil filter now. So this is the oil filter housing. It's actually kind of like a 2-part thing you have to do in order to get it apart. So the first step is this center cap. This one right here, this little small one in the middle, has to be removed so we can go ahead and let some of the oil drain from the oil filter housing. So what we're going to do is just take some big pliers here. It's got a reasonable grip. There we go. Start turning this thing loose. Now that I've cracked it loose, I should be able to just finger thread this thing on out of here. And what I have done is moved our oil pan and our oil steel pan up some right underneath of this filter housing, so we keep a clean work environment and we don't get oil all over the place. So let's go ahead and finish threading this inner cap here off. Now, typically this does have a little tie, almost like a wire tie, holding this onto the mount housing itself, but this one has been broken by somebody in the past, so you could typically let it hang. I'm just going to put this to the side since the wire is broken. All right, now that we have that cap off of the middle of the housing, you can see there is a little maroonish, orangey, reddish, whatever color you want to deem that as, nipple. And what we are going to do is take a flathead, press that up, and that's going to allow more oil to drain out, and that'll help empty out that oil filter housing so we can go ahead and remove the cap to get the filter out. So I'm going to take this flathead, press it up, and there we go, guys. I'm just going to go ahead and let this remainder of this oil here drain out, and then we'll get the oil filter out. All right, so after a reasonable amount of oil dripping out, as you can see, we got this pretty much to a slow drip, almost nothing. So as you can see, that nipple is a little bit offset. Now we just need to get that back centered into its correct alignment. Now there's a couple ways you can do this. You can even take a little needle nose or use the flathead to push it back. I just have a straight pick here. I'm just gonna pop it right back. All right, so all I did is take this, put it in the center, and barely touch it, and it pushed it right back into the center alignment. All right, so that's back aligned. So let's go ahead and get the remainder of this oil filter housing disassembled to get the oil filter out. All right, so there is a specific oil filter wrench to get this entire plastic assembly twisted off. So what I have here is the correct oil filter wrench socket here. So it is a 74 millimeter. Sorry if that focus isn't coming in, but 74 millimeter 14 flute. All right, now the part number is W54121. You can get this right from AutoZone, and you will see this wrench listed as 74 millimeter or sometimes 74.5. In this particular case, they do have it listed as 74 millimeter 14 flute, but as you can see here, it fits right over perfect, okay? So that thing's right on there, tight, perfect fit. Got it right from AutoZone, and that's the correct oil filter wrench in order to get this off. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a little extension on this with the socket wrench, and we're gonna turn that housing right off. All right, so we got it on, guys. Looks like whoever did this last time decided to put it on pretty tight. There we go, guys, got it. Got her spinning. So I'm gonna disconnect my socket wrench. And you do want to make sure you got your oil pan and everything directly underneath of this, because more oil is of course going to come out. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing turned off here. We should have our paper filter in here. There it is. And not too much coming out, guys, just a few drips, but there we go, guys. Oil filter completely removed, and that was the correct tool to get that filter right off. All right, so we do have the filter housing, filter out. So one thing I'm going to do real quick while that is off is I'm just going to take a little bit of brake cleaner. I'm going to spray in here. Now I am going to be doing the oil pan on this car as well, so I do want to get all this cleaned up really nice. I'm just going to do a little bit of cleaning in here. Take a paper towel, shop towel, and get in that oil filter housing and wipe everything out. And then we can go ahead and put the new oil filter in and get that back tightened up. All right, so there is our oil filter housing, the old oil filter, and we have the new oil filter here. I did get the OEM filter from Volkswagen, and there is the part number right there if you're looking to get that OEM filter. So all we got to do now is get this old one out. Should just slide right out. Okay. That is the old filter. So what we're going to do is take this, just drain out any remaining oil from this housing. All right, let me get a little bit more like I'm getting right now. All right, now that we got that all drained out, I'm just going to take a towel. It's going to be kind of hard one-handed, but I'm just going to go around the inside of this, just give it a nice wipe down. Try to clean it as much as possible before we put this new filter in here. All right, so I don't know if you can see in here, but I got this thing pretty clean. Got it all wiped out, all the old oil out of the housing. All right, so the next thing we want to do here is, if you notice, there is a little tab right here. This thing that my index is pointing at, that is a O-ring that goes in this housing to help seal the oil filter housing onto the engine. So we're going to go ahead and see if we can get this thing out, because the new one does come with a new O-ring, so we want to get that in the housing and seal that up correctly. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get this O-ring out. I'm just gonna take some needle nose pliers on that tab, and as you can see, I just pulled it right out. All right, nothing crazy, just pull it Then we got the whole old O-ring completely out. And if you look, even with this OEM oil filter that comes with even a little bit of directions here, so has kind of a little bit of step-by-step there if you need a little bit more pictures or guidance. Now we do want to note that this tab does face upwards, so what we're going to do is get a little bit of oil on this thing. I'm just going to dip it in the old oil. Do want to oil it, it's nothing crazy. I'm just going to try to shake off as much as I possibly can. All right, I'm just going to drop this thing right back down where it came from. So we have this new O-ring in. I'm just going to take my finger, go around the edge, make sure it's pressed in nice and tight as it is. So we have our new O-ring installed into the housing. So now that we have the new O-ring installed into the housing, we're just going to take our new filter here, drop it right down, slides right in, perfect. And now we can go ahead and get this housing right back onto the engine. All right, now that we got the filter in and the housing and everything all clean, we're just going to take our housing here with the filter in there. And I'm just going to lightly screw this thing on here. Shouldn't take too long, should start to grab. Essentially just going to go until I get it finger tight. All right, so we got that filter housing tight. Now this does actually have a torque spec. It's even on the housing itself. I don't know if you can see it. It says 25 Newton meters plus 5. And that is what was on our little paper that came with the oil filter. Now, I don't think this thing has to be ridiculously tight, but I have the torque wrench set to 25 Newton meters, which would be about 18.5 foot-pounds, or like 216 inch-pounds, roughly 220. So I have the inch-pounds set to 216, and I'm just going to lock it in at 216 inch-pounds. All right, got that locked in, guys. All right, now the last thing here is we're just going to take our little cap here that goes in the center of our housing, start getting this thing back in here. Just doing it right with my hand, and I'm just going to lock this in as tight as I can with my hand. Yeah, I got a pretty good turn on that with my hand, actually. So I'm going to leave it at that. Should be good. And we're all but done, guys. All right, and our last step here is just to torque this new oil drain plug to spec. Now it is 30 Newton meters or 22 foot-pounds. I have my torque wrench set to 22 foot-pounds, so we go ahead and get this thing locked in at 22. Remember, it is a 19 mil. There we go, guys. Take it off and just go back and double check, but yeah, she's locked in. So we got that locked in at 22 foot-pounds. Good to go. All right, so we're under the hood. We're going to go ahead and get this thing filled up with the oil. Now I have Castrol Edge. This is full synthetic 540, and this is approved by VW. Might be hard to see there, but let's see if I can get this to zoom in. But VW 50200/50500. So this is good to go. And as you can see, we even have Castrol on the oil cap there. So we got 6 quarts here of Castrol Edge. Now the oil capacity is about 5.5 to 6 quarts. I'm going to go right in the middle, right about 5.8. So I'm going to probably pour a majority of this in, just maybe leave a little bit at the very bottom. But that's where I want to try to pour it up to. So I'm going to go ahead and get this oil cap off here. All right, so we got our funnel. Just going to put it right down to the oil fill spot. And we're just going to start pouring this stuff in, guys. Just be careful, it can get almost overfilled. I had it coming up on me. Stuff's expensive, guys. I'm getting every last drop. All right, so we got the jug in. So now we're just going to get the majority of this quart container in here. All right, I got most of that quart in there. There's maybe like a few drops left, but should be good on filling this thing up with oil. And all we got to do now is put our cap back on. right, so last step here before we put the splash shield back on is you just want to check everything, look around, make sure you don't have any leaks, check your drain plug, make sure we got no leaks anywhere. Oil filter housing and the lower cap look good. I don't see anything dripping. I've had this running for about 30 minutes off and on, so we're looking pretty good, guys. So we just want to make sure we had no leaks. Now the last thing is we just want to go ahead and put our splash guard back on and put in the 8 Torx bit screws that hold it in. So let's go ahead and slide that back on. Alright, so I hope this helped with doing the oil change on your 2.5 VW. Stay tuned, because you never know when I might be wrenching on this thing again. And until next time, guys.